Well, hello, class. Sorry we didn't get a chance to talk on Google Hangout earlier today, but I hope you were able to make good use of that time and maybe even get some reading done in the class this week. This is actually a favorite week of mine. I really love this topic. I love some of the things to think about. In fact, without even realizing, I didn't make the connections until later on this afternoon. I taught my undergraduate career class, so it's called Career and Life Planning. I was teaching that class earlier today, and looking at the content that we're covering in this unit and then talking about what we talked about earlier in my class today, there's some great connections. Actually, we had a really, I think, robust discussion on all sorts of diversity-related issues or elements within the conversation as my students in the undergraduate class, obviously they're studying to get a bachelor's degree and to go into the workforce. And so there's all sorts of kind of challenging, somewhat, some would say controversial topics that they're talking about, they're thinking about, and then they're going to eventually have to tackle when they get into the real world. And so one of the things that I was even saying to them was, I said, I want to be careful in how I communicate this. I hope you don't hear me wrongly. But I said, frankly, I'm not really all that concerned with the work that I'm doing to prepare you to succeed as a college student. You kind of see some wide eyes like, what did he just say? And I said, and here's why. What I'm more concerned about, in fact, what I'm most concerned about, is are we as an institution, am I as an instructor doing a good job to prepare you to be successful for life after college? That's what I'm saying to the undergraduate students. Now, here again, I want you to succeed, but we've probably had brief conversations so far that success is going to look differently. Success is not just getting an A, frankly. Success might be getting a C minus and yet still being able to walk away from the class and saying, I learned a tremendous amount. One of the things that we said today in our class, I said, if you walk away from this course and you can say that maybe you learned nothing, but we had that conversation about, the workforce and oftentimes how gender is seen, or, all these different realities that come with work, and how certain jobs, as we'll talk about this week, are, we have been told, or we've seen in the media, or it's been implied that only certain, jobs are for male, certain jobs are for female, only certain cultures can have this job, or other cultures can't have these sorts of jobs and whatnot. But one of the conversations that happens so often is we get to this reality of talking about stay-at-home mothers, stay-at-home fathers, and so forth. We'll actually talk more about this when it comes to adulthood. But so often when you hear people talk that way, oh, what do you do? We subconsciously, I think, even say things like, I'm just a stay-at-home dad, right? I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just this. And so there's almost this sense of like shame that comes with it. Like, I'm just fill in the blank. And we're putting that on ourselves because somebody or something, some external environmental something, factor, person, whatever, media, has told us that because we are something in the workforce, or we're not something in the workforce, we are less than. So I said, if you get nothing out of this class, maybe the one thing we can all agree on is that we'll stop using that word just. I'm just this, because nobody is just anything. Because if you think about it from the context of the Reformation doctrine of vocation, as we've talked about, all jobs have dignity. And even yesterday we were talking in another class about there's a problem where we, in this world, we strip one's dignity away, or we feel like we give dignity to people. But what we talked about was because we are made in the image of God, we are image bearers of the creator of the universe. We see in Genesis, in the beginning, he created, and on and on and on, he created them in his image, male and female in his image. We have innate dignity. And so what we do then is we don't strip away dignity. We actually don't give dignity. I shouldn't say we don't strip away. We don't give. People have it, but what we do is we affirm it. So we look at, the person that's on the street, and with the work that's being done, even just as we talk in this class, the homeless population. And we think that by stooping down to them and talking with them and asking questions and showing interest, we're giving them a form of dignity. No, what we are doing in that instance is we are affirming the dignity. We are recognizing, we're saying, it doesn't matter what your status is. It doesn't matter what job you have or don't have. I see you. Like, I really see you for who you are. And in that, when we meet, our eyes locked, oftentimes even that is an incredibly important reality when we're affirming, when we're stamping and saying yes. Such is when we start to refer to folks from as the other, right? So we call names or we place labels, and those aren't, it's what we're saying. So that person is less than. Well, at that point, then we are not. We can't take dignity away from anybody, but we are making them feel less than, and that's also an issue. So as we get into this topic, this really complex topic of a global economy, and we start, when I say we start, because we're going to get more and more into it, but we start into career issues for a diverse workforce, we have some really important questions to talk about. So we've got some questions in the forums that I want you to look at. So describe significant changes, career or otherwise, that have occurred in your life and how you've handled these situations. See, once again, as you've seen so far, these questions are really in reference to us personally. Because if we can't answer them personally, I find it very difficult or challenging or even perplexing to think that we would be able to help other people answer these questions if we're not first dealing with them on our own. Okay, so you're going to answer these questions on your own. Describe changes that you might want to make in the future, and appropriately use the terms positive uncertainty and planned happenstance in approaching future changes. How do you normally handle change in your life? And even from the conversations that we have had so far in this semester, I think one of the great, really, I would say, blessings, perhaps, at least for me, as I'm watching some of these things unfold in our conversations and your responses, is that it seems to me that this course, if it was simply just from a personal standpoint, is coming at a very timely time. So looking for some new opportunities, even talking about your husband and his job and searching. So this is, I think it's great timing. And I love how God works in those moments to provide opportunities that speak to the needs that we have. Second question then is, how is the current Great Recession? And I say current, though the book obviously was written a number of years ago, I still think we're dealing with some of the residual of the Great Recession that's dating back all the way to 2008 even. So how has the Great Recession affected your goals? How has your desired life changes been altered? Do you agree even with Bardwick's naming of the recent economic times as a psychological recession? And then, of course, the question is why or why not? And then you're going to kind of get into some background. Okay, so I just finished, I don't know if I mentioned this before in our conversations, but I just finished completing the Ancestry DNA test. So we had thought, or at least we were curious about, but we had been under the impression that based upon my last name, Oian, that our family was Armenian. And my brother even got a big Armenian genocide tattoo right here on his shoulder. So I said, I need to find out for sure, because we had all these books, and none of them said anything about having any sort of lineage to Armenia. And so we took the assessment or the test and got the results back, and I am 100%. I felt almost like Maury Povich, like, the test says you are not Armenian. 100% European, 37% Scandinavian is part of that, and so on and so forth. So 3% Jewish, I think the next 21% Irish, and then there's a breakdown of some others in there as well. But interesting, so much of who we are is affected by our past. And so here you are, you're going to, what you know anyway, up until this year I didn't really know exactly what my background was, but in this forum, you're going to spend some time talking about, as much as you know, your family immigration culture, socioeconomic status, gender, sibling positions, family roles, and so forth. In what ways might your personal background affect your viewpoints and or create bias when working with clients in a career counseling relationship? Keep in mind the issues of diversity discussed in Chapter 7 when answering these questions. So yeah, this is and here again, we define things all differently, and so you're going to, based upon who you are, your upbringing, and all those things that kind of play into making you who you are. The question then is, who am I, and how, if I'm not careful, right? This idea of implicit bias, how might these realities of implicit bias, of just outright bias, how might they affect the work that I'm doing? So what we're needing to do then, of course, is to remove these biases, to look at our clients very objectively, right? So throughout this subjective lens, saying, well, based upon, but no, it's really, I've learned this, and we're going to do this and work with you there. But understanding the biases, I think, is the first step in the process, but then it goes into what do we then do in response to the biases, right? So those are always fun questions, I think, for us to think about and then for us to respond to. There's some additional reading that you'll click on and get to. Let me know if that link doesn't open for some reason. I actually just clicked on it and it opened just fine, but every now and again I do hear from folks that it doesn't. And then you'll read an excerpt from Malcolm Gladwell's brilliant book, Blink, and there's a video from Dan Ariely. It's a TED Talk, which is fantastic. And then if you have any other thoughts, feel free to share those as well. For some reason, again, I'm in Chrome, that video is not popping up, but make sure to go under there and you'll see the URL for the YouTube video, and you can click on that and watch that. Okay, so that's this week as far as the forums go. In addition to the forums, you also will do case study 5 and 6. Okay, so get in there and start to respond to those, just kind of thinking through how might you, based upon what you know, respond to those questions, okay, those situations, those scenarios. And then you'll see that along with last week, this week, we should be starting in on the second unit's worth of reading the vocation and calling text of your choice. So here, the nice thing is we have plenty of time. Obviously you can see that we dating back all the way to Unit 3, so starting January 30th. We have a number of weeks that are slated for you just to be reading your vocation and calling text, and the paper itself is not due until the end of Unit 6, which doesn't happen until April. So that's plenty of time to get the book read, but I'm going to continue to remind us that we need to have the book in hand. You've got a spring break weekend there in the middle of March, so lots of time, but just make sure that you're staying on task to get all of that done. Okay? So if there's any questions, feel free to call or to email. For some reason, I should say just email because my phone is not working. If you want to set up a time for us to talk on a Google Hangout, or even just even for 5 minutes, and you'd rather just kind of talk out loud face to face and see me and my expressions, and vice versa, we can do that. Just email me and we'll set up a time to make that happen. Okay. So again, we're in chapters 6 and 7 from Anderson and Van He. We're not going to get into the LipTak text this unit. So it's a lower key unit, so perhaps this is the best time for you to start into the vocation and calling reading. All right. So I hope you have a great week. And again, if I can help in any way, let me know. I should have things updated as far as grades go to the papers and things that you've submitted so far. And we'll go from there. All right. So have a great week. Have a great rest of this first week of the unit, and then we'll see you toward the end of the second unit next Thursday, assuming that nothing comes up like it did today. All right. Thanks so much for your efforts. Looking forward to the continued discussions that we'll have in the days and weeks to come. See you soon.